A train had stopped in 39. A family got off, hardly having a dime. Mother and father with girls and boys, now here was room for all their joys. But where was town? There was none to be seen. A house and a barn, but fairly clean. So in with the family they did live. 4 adults there were, and 7 kids. The kids were all small, so sorry to say, it couldn't always stay this way. More room was needed for them all. One family must move, came the call. Now Mom and the kids went on the train. On Saturdays, it only came. So then in town, the train stood still. Now, was this really God's will? Now children, hurry and hustle your butt. We've got lots to do before we eat sup. So down to the store to find your new place. What a disaster and a disgrace. But this was home in their own eyes. Can we deny who is so wise? God has led us all this way. Who are we to unwelcome our stay? What's for supper, Mum, we asked. Just then, Mum looked a little sad. 1 pan, 1 fork, 1 spoon and knife. We must all share and share alike. So on the airtight heater went. Now, Mother, over our supper was bent. Then on the floor we sat down to eat. Please, Mother called, now watch your feet. A hard day's work was done for Dad. But when he got home, he was very sad. They've gone to town, the lady said. Much too crowded, with a couple of beds. So 6 miles down the road Dad walked. Through his head went many a thought. But he did find us in good shape, with 1 fork, 1 spoon, and 1 plate. But where will we sleep, he cried through the door. Baby and I sleep on the spring, the rest on the floor. So this was home, as you can see. Mom, Dad, 3 others, and me. A little red schoolhouse was built in town. If there weren't more kids, it would be shut down. There were 11 kids, but needed 1 more, so Sis went with teacher through the door. In school, the children were treated the same. 1 roll call they answered when called by name. But Sis knew better than anyone else. She'd come to school with the teacher herself. Winter came upon us fast. The Christmas program had just passed. Then disaster struck again, and things just wouldn't be the same. The fire started by the pipe. Sis, go to the store, ask men to fight. But the flames swept swift and fast, but all the kids were out at last. No coat, no hat, or boots, or shoes. But we will count it out by 2s. Wrapped in a blanket in the snow, we saw our house in a sad aglow. But we were not left so all alone. The neighbors called us to their home. All was lost, our Christmas dolls too. 1 dressed pretty, and the other could coo. So the bachelor's home we went. Here the rest of winter was spent. A farm was bought with hard-earned money. We moved one day when it was sunny. The log house took 9 days to build. A rented wagon we had filled. With our belongings, small and dear, we owned a kitten who purred in our ear. Now on the farm the work was hard. We worked hard for our butter and lard. The kids worked hard stuffing moss in the cracks so paper wouldn't fall again over their backs. Now buildings were built for stock and such. To play around wasn't done much. The fences were built around the property with care, and flies and mosquitoes all in our hair. Dad went to work for pay for $25 and walked all the way. 12 miles down the road he went. Now let me tell you, every dime was well spent. Coming winter, Dad worked at a mill. 25 cents an hour and walked, he did still. But this on hand, the food could be paid. Now with that out of the way, we'd have it made. But Christmas on the farm came too. Doll beds out of apple boxes, Dad made the rockers too. Mom made the curtain to match, and with care, each had her own play and to share. 7 o'clock was last call for breakfast. If you didn't hurry, it would be past. Milking cows, cleaning barn, and hauling snow, all had to be done before we could go. When we came home from school each day, we'd feed the horses and cows their hay, bring in the firewood, which would be lots, then down to the barn to milk in our pots. Dad came home just twice a week and told us that we were just neat to help our mother in all her way and to listen to what she had to say. Now harnessing horses was quite some chore, but that's how the groceries came from the store. Hauling wood from the river took time, but for a well, we hadn't a dime. But paying the taxes for the farm, today it would be quite an alarm. But working on the road did this, so for many years, Dad did not miss. Farmers complained then too, you know. More fields had to be opened, more things to grow. Money was tight in those days, but God looked after us always. A man from the government came to survive to see why farmers were complaining this way. Out came his pencil and his notebook. Now, he said, let's have a good long work. Look, you spent all this, he said as he jumped to his feet. With all this spent, you had nothing left to eat. But every day, food was on the table. With God's help, all things are able. Now, church lifestyle, that was a must. So in God we put our trust. Walked our distance of 5 miles, and with it carried all our smiles. In a neighboring house we had our church. It could have been so much worse. A mirror on the wall, a mirror in a frame was on the wall. A boy on the bench sat very tall, pulling faces all the time. When collection came, he forgot his dime. Then off the wall came mirror and frame. Now everything would be the same. But trust in God we had to do, to build a church for me and you. Blocks and boards, enough benches for all lined up against the wall. Around the scaffold I did see, to hear the minister preach to me. The sermons were long and were in Dutch, so listen carefully or we wouldn't hear much. Little brother was too small, but we were big and strong and tall, so we pulled him in a cart. How our feet at times did smart. Wintertime came with a different story. When we could stay at home, it was to our glory. But not too often did this happen. Moccasins and big socks kept us from napping. Wintertime came with horses and sleigh. We'd snuggle down deep in the horses' hay. Coming home was always fun when running a race with the neighbors begun. In spring, a truck the neighbors had. With a ride like this, we were thankful and glad. Little ones in the middle, so we wouldn't lose any, to sing and to pray with friends that were many. House visitation was done on horseback. So really, what did we have to lack? One place for coffee, another a meal. Man, that was sure some deal. We never knew when the preacher would come, so someone would get us on the run. Then out of the hayfield a running we came, glad to hear the preacher calling us by name. Bear and moose meat we had for meals. Minister said it was quite a good deal, but when he found out that the bear was meat, very soon he was on his feet. But later, when Otto was there to be used, he came to the neighbor to be excused, 'cause on the road he had gotten stuck, the ruts very deep and a lot of muck. But sir, the neighbor said to him, your faith must be very dim. The horses I have to get to tow, to pull the truck so it can go. 'Twas 50 below one winter day. The kids were quickly rushed out of the way. Once outside we said to Dad, do we really have to go? The weather's so bad. Our 5-year-old brother came too, you know. Please now, don't cry or your face will freeze so. Hopping and running and skipping and jumping, we told the lady our brother was coming. Later that day, Dad came to town to find out if we were all down. But then he told us all was well. Mother and baby were doing just swell. Now all this had passed so long ago. Who could have told us all this so? We pray to God for love and care, that we with you these thoughts may share. So young and old are all alike. We are all precious in God's sight. God gave us all that we have today. Let's enjoy it, but in God's way. That we in church here will abide, with doors that open very wide. With unity in every love, we'll see us all in our home above. My Dutch name is Shirley. I was named after my grandmother on Dad's side. 1933 that I was born. And Mom and Dad at the time were looking after a post office. And anyway, then it was time for me to get born. So Dad went and looked for a midwife. And Mom was still in the post office, serving the customers. So finally Dad came back with the midwife.
So what in this area time, what did a midwife do? And was it like a normal thing, like people had midwives?
People didn't go to the hospital then. There weren't such a thing as a hospital. And it was midwives always came to the home then to deliver the woman's baby. And so then Dad came with the midwife, and then Dad took over and Mom went into bed to deliver me, and she was just barely in bed, and then I was born. So it was just by the skin of her teeth that she got in bed.
Just in time. What's your earliest memory of living in Holland? If you can pick one.
That we were living right across the street from Pa and Bella. That was grandmother and grandfather.
Oh, okay.
And that was on Dad's side of the family.
What did Grandpa do in Holland before you immigrated?
He was working for his dad on the farm.
Oh,
And then Mom and Dad, they ran a post office. And in 1938, that is when we immigrated. I was just a little over 4 years old, because I was born the 30th of December. And then the spring of 1938 is when we immigrated here. So I was about 4.5 years old at the time. My sister was 1.5 years older than I am. And then I had 2 brothers under me. I remember very clearly what was going on. There was rumors of the Second World War coming.
That was a factor.
That was also a factor. And so then Dad and Mom decided to come to Canada. There was another family that we traveled with on the boat, because in those days, planes did not travel. The men and the women were separated. With the woman always kept all the small children, and then the older children could stay with their dad in the men's department. And this was only in the women's department.
How long was the ride or the trip?
Oh, must have been at least 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah. I think it was that. I'm not 100% sure. But I know it was quite some time. And then, of course, traveling from Halifax to Alberta on the train.
How long were you living in Alberta?
Oh, let's see, we came in spring, I guess. It must have been in the fall or so that we...
So less than a year.
Oh yes, it was less than a year. My brother, my younger brother then, of course, was pretty small. He never ate the solid food. And so then this other lady that we traveled with and Mom, they were in a restaurant and they were going to gather so I'd get some food to eat. But anyway, they couldn't make it understood that these kids were pretty small. They couldn't have the real food that we ate. And so anyway, they were allowed to go into the kitchen and prepare their own small children's food. And so then we moved, we landed in Halifax, I think it was. And we went on the train to my uncle's place. That was a sister of my mother. And they were living in Alberta. So then that's how we came to Alberta. But then we, Dad and my uncle had a little bit of issue with each other. And so then Dad separated. And then in that time there was a field man in Edmonton. A field man is to get new people that came in to establish somewhere else to live and expand.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And so then that's what happened then. And so then Dad got a hold of this guy and he traveled to Houston or to Smithers. And this is how Dad got interested in the field. And when we came here, then we got to a small town called Barrett. And that is where Dad would work because the farmer would pay him a little bit of money to look after the cattle and to feed them.
Yeah.
And so then that's why it says in the poem there were there 4 adults and 7 kids.
Yeah.
And so then of course it was way too much. And so then they then one time this lady talked to Mom, and well, the mom decided, well, enough is enough. So then she just decided to pack up the 4 kids without even talking to Dad about it, because he was working for this farmer. And so by surprise, of course, when he came home, we weren't there anymore. He couldn't figure out why. But anyway, then when we went to Houston, and that was, the train ticket then was 25 cents.
From Houston to
Barrett.
To Barrett.
From Barrett to Houston. And so anyway, we got on the train and we got off at Houston. But then where were we going to go? So anyway, there was a store there, and then the guy came and he says, really, well, there was an Anglican church we could go to, but there was just one room in that Anglican church. If a minister came, he would have some place to stay and cook his own food. That's why we only had 1 fork, 1 plate, 1 spoon, and 1 knife.
Oh.
And so then the small child would eat with the handle part of the fork to get his food in his mouth. Well, we could all take turns eating from the real fork because there was only 1 fork to share.
Yeah, that makes it tricky.
And so then that's how that was. And then Dad came home and he was shot out of his tree. But anyway, we survived. And then one winter, it was, in those days, it was always minus 50, 60 below Fahrenheit. So that was pretty cold.
Yep.
But anyway, so then Mom would have to go down to the river, chop a hole in the ice to get our water, what we needed.
Wow.
And there was always no inside plumbing, of course, it was all outside. So, of course, sitting on the toilet, you didn't stay too long.
You'd freeze.
He could easily freeze. But anyway, nevertheless, we got through there, and then one time Mom was going to go down, and at those times they wallpapered the ceiling as well as the walls. But we only had those metal pipes that go from the heater through the ceiling and to the outside, of course. And the wallpaper was so close to the pipe that it caught fire. And so we were all left stranded because the wallpaper caught fire in the ceiling. And there was no fire trucks or anything. It all had to be done manually. So anyway, the whole building, the whole church building burnt down.
Do you remember what year that was?
Oh, that must have been 38 when we grew up. Must have been 30, the winter of 39, I think. Where I can remember sitting outside on the snow. No coat on or anything, and we had a little blanket to sit on. And that's why we sat in minus 50 below Fahrenheit. So anyway, then the storekeeper was there, and he had a store, and he had a house and a wife and some children, and we stayed with them in the building, in their house. But then finally it was getting kind of crowded, so then there was another family, and we were, my sister and I could stay with them, and then Mom and Dad would just stay with the 2 boys. I only had 2 brothers at that time, stayed with that family. There was another single bachelor. He was working in the bush at that time, because everything in the bush was done by horses.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any such thing as power saw. They all had to saw them off by hand. And then the bachelor, of course, would come on Saturday afternoon to get his groceries, or Saturday morning it was, that he would come down to get his groceries. Because in those days, Sunday was Sunday. There was, like it says in the Lord's Day, 6 days thou shalt labor and do all your work.
Yeah.
And the seventh day is a rest for the Lord. And so we paid very strict attention to that. So that even the stores, the post office, the restaurants were all closed at that time. Saturday afternoon and all day Sunday. They were closed because that was the Lord's Day. And then we finally could move away from town, and there was a nice property there. It was mostly bush, mind you. But anyway, then Dad decided that would be the best place to live, and then we were living 1.5 miles out of Houston.
Yeah.
And so then that was fine, but we had to walk all the time. No matter where we went, we had to walk.
Didn't have a horse or anything?
No, not at that time. We couldn't afford it.
Fair enough.
Because Dad never had any money to spare. And so then that's how we got, but later on we got a horse, and we helped Mom, and then we had some cows, and we did the milking, and we shipped the milk, or the cream it was, to Talpa, BC, to make butter.
Yeah.
And so then that was fine, and that's where we made a little bit of money.
How did Grandpa get the money to buy the farm in the first place?
He didn't, but he was allowed to build there because they wanted to expand up north, so he could live there. But the thing is, to be able to live there, you had to work for the government then, and that is how Dad paid for the farm. But the way that he paid for could pay for the farm was that he graded the road with a stumboat and horses at that time, and kept the road level, and he upgraded the road that way, and that was even before gravel was on the road, and covered up the potholes and everything. That's how he made his money to be able to pay for the farm. So actually it didn't really cost him anything, but except that he just had to work for it. But that was generosity of the government at that time, just to be able
Lots
to
of space.
Establish.
Yeah. They were trying to expand a lot and settle different areas.
Exactly, yeah.
That's cool.
When Dad would sell the beef to get money in, he would ship the meat, the cattle, to Alberta to get butchered.
Wow.
But that wasn't done in BC then.
Do you remember getting electricity?
Oh, yes. That was in 1952, 53.
Oh, it's pretty late.
1953. Because that was the year that Grandpa and I got married.
That long?
And that they had electricity, a little bit electricity in town before, but by the time we got it on the farm, before I was married, then it was in 53 before we got the electricity. And first Dad wasn't going to get it. He says it's too expensive. But anyway, then there were a couple of neighbors that were pretty close, and we had to have so many signatures on if they were able to bring electricity. to the poles and so on and so forth. And so then anyway, they built that, and so Dad was not going to sign, but the neighbors signed up for him. And so then it was in 53 by the time that they finally did get electricity there. And otherwise everything was done by hand.
What did you first use it for? Do you know? Like
For lights in the house.
that was just the main
That
part?
was only the main purpose, you know, just for lights in the house. And then, of course, we found out the electricity could do much more. So, then, of course, then you expand.
Yeah, it must have been a little. Whoa.
What did you use for lights before you got electricity?
A color lamp, or otherwise gas lanterns.
One of the old classic ones. The
Well, we always had mantles. Well, it was a base and a little stem, and had two mantles. And could be as a shade on the top, so that the shade didn't hit the ceiling, but you had it here at the table where you could read.
yeah.
And so then that was our light. But first of all, before we had the gas lantern, a lamp, we had a coil lantern. You know what a coil lantern is?
No.
Oof.
I mean, maybe I just don't know the name, but
Well, there was ordinary base with a lamp glass, and we used that to travel all with farmland, or go from the house to the barn, and this was one way to light our path. And we used that lantern. There was a coal oil one, not a gas one,
Yeah.
just a coal oil one. And that is how we quite often got to town also. And this was our means at that time then, that was our source of light. So of course, we went to bed early to be able to save on the all on the fuel, and got up early so that we would have enough fuel left in the lantern, in the gas lamp then, to be able to light from around 7 o'clock until 8 o'clock, and then the gas would be running out and the lights off. And you had to make do with what natural light came in.
had to plan ahead. When you got to Canada, you couldn't speak English.
No, we only know the Frisian language.
Frisian, which is dialect of Dutch, or would you consider it its own?
Well, not a dialect of the Dutch. Frisian is a language all by itself.
Wow.
And that was the only language that I knew.
So how did that work once you got here, learning English?
Well, learning English, yes. As kids, when you are 4 or 5, it's easy enough to pick up because we only played with Canadian kids that only knew English.
Yeah.
So we learned English. And then my mother, she was very smart. And she said already, you guys talk English to us so we can learn the language, and we'll talk to you in the Frisian tongue, in our Dutch language.
Yeah.
And so then that is how I learned both languages.
Do you remember getting your first vehicle, or your family getting their first vehicle?
Well, I can remember my dad. Oh, I don't remember what year it was. In 53 we got. And for years we went to church with our horse and buggy, or our horse and sled. But it was, it must have been in 53, I think, or 52. The dad got his first vehicle, and so did my brother. And one time I remember my brother was coming from town and he was going to go home. And Dad was just going to go to town. They just got into a collision.
The only two cars in town?
No, not in town. There were more cars at that time, but that was the first time that they had. And I don't even think that they needed driver's license at that time. You know, everybody just drove. But that was pretty cute.
Do you remember what kind of cars they were? Were they just like pickup trucks or?
Well, mostly pickup trucks, but don't ask me what brand.
Fair
they
enough,
were,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, probably.
So I don't remember that at all.
Chevys or Fords, one of those two.
Yeah, probably either one of them.
So your dad was a farmer and kind of like a handyman, sort of?
Well, he got into a handyman kind of thing, but he was a farmer at heart because that's what his father had, you see.
That's what he started on. Did your mom do anything professionally, or did she mostly take care of the family?
She was an RN.
A nurse?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So when you got here, obviously you said there was no hospital, or there.
No, but she looked after us.
Okay.
But one thing might be interesting to you, because one time when the nurses came out, they would visit here and there and everywhere to see how people made out and how sick they were and so on and so forth. And because there wasn't any drugstore at that time either.
Yeah.
And so anyway, then there came this health guy came and he wanted to know how Mom was doing and so on and what our family was like. They were healthy. And oh yeah, we were fine. Well, he says, I'll come again in, in a certain amount of time to see how things were and what medication we needed. And anyway, this guy came back again and says, what was your expenses for staying healthy? Oh, Mom says, let me think. I think it's a box of Band-Aids. He says, is that all what you have? Yeah, she said, we're all good and healthy. And just a little cut maybe here and there, put a Band-Aid on and away we go.
Old school healthcare.
But Mom was very good at looking after us because even living on the farm, we had farmed the whole farm with fences so the cattle wouldn't get out when we got the cattle.
Yeah.
And I don't know, she made it do. And we would follow Mom and do the fencing with her.
She sounds like she's a hard worker.
She was a very hard worker. She's very dedicated, yeah. She was 3 years older than my dad. But nevertheless, she was an excellent mother.
For yourself, what have you done professionally, I guess, throughout your time in Canada?
He was working for the co-op at the time. And so then he needed some help for the bookkeeping because his lady had quit. She says she couldn't read Dad's writing because nothing was done on computer, everything was handwritten on paper.
Of course.
And she said she couldn't read Dad's writing. And so then she quit. Well, I says to Dad, he says, okay, I says, just let me try it then. And so then I did it. I did a job. Dad and Leonard started in Telqua. Then they had their own business. And they started that. And then I had done all the bookkeeping for Dad there too.
Speaking of Grandpa, so you got married in
53.
And then how many kids did you end up having?
We had 6 kids.
6 kids.
4 in 4 years.
Wow.
8 years later, and then we had Arthur and Maureen.
And Did you have? Well, they all grew up over in Smithers, right?
In Houston.
It was
BC.
in Houston. Okay. So when did you move down to Smithers, or?
My husband was manager of the co-op and was only getting 5% of all the sales that he made.
Wow, that's nothing.
And you see, and that's what he had to pay 2 workers for, that 5%.
Out of that 5%, wow.
And so, of course, in February, when the sale could not get along too well, everything was slowing down, then the hired help still had to get paid. So, but he was not getting in any money for doing the sales. And then they said that he was ordering too much stuff. And Dad sold everything what he ordered. In '76, my husband had a heart attack, and he had a double bypass, and all that operation took about 8 hours. And so then he had to take 6 weeks off work. And so then they hired this other guy to take the management job, but the co-op decided to pay him 12%. And then they all of a sudden could afford to pay the hired help as well.
Of course.
And so then, well, he says, he's at the end of his life, he can't work anymore. My husband decided, oh, enough is enough. So then we moved to Smithers, and then we started our business in Telqua because there was a cheap ground there. And so then that is where the business started, and now it is called the Castle something or another.
The hardware store?
Hardware store, yeah.
Yeah, it started out as a feed supply store.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about church, like how it's changed for you from when you got there to that little church up until now?
Woof.
There's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, well, we had a walk. First it was only in town, so that was a 1.5 mile walk when more immigrants came in. But we always had to meet in somebody else's place. So anyway, we finally found a more permanent place, and then we had to walk 5 miles to go to church. You know where Buck Flat Road is?
Oh, me,
In
no.
Houston?
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Well, anyway, that's where the church was first built. And so then the people from Barrett and the people from Houston, and that was about halfway. And so then that is where we held the church. Things have changed quite a bit. But then when it was cold, and it was so cold at church, or to go to church, Mom would stay home with because then I had my youngest brother. Mom would stay home with the 3 boys, and Dad, my sister and I would walk to church. But that was the time that we were allowed to wear our snow pants to go to church, but under a skirt, because no girls wore pants at that time. That was a no-no. We did not have a minister at that time, so we had a lot of reading services done, but there was also a consistory of elders and deacons, but not very many, of course, because the congregation was quite small.
And your church services or your minister services, those were they in Dutch or Fries?
Oh, first of all, they were all in Dutch. They were all in Dutch, and that's what it says ready.
Yeah.
You listen carefully or you'll miss most of it. But yes, and later on, when there was more teenagers coming in church, or at least 12 and older, then they decided to have one service a month in English.
Oh, yeah.
And then later on, they decided to have two services, and then later on it was more and more, and now it's 100% English.
Yeah, by this point, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Seeing we had traveled so far from either way, we had a church at 10 o'clock, and then we always took our own lunch along to eat at church. And then meanwhile, we could have catechism. Our catechism was also in between the church services, as well as we could walk for maybe 10-15 minutes, and then at 2 o'clock was our second service for the day, and after that we could come home. That was the only time that we could kind of associate and visit with each other.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we just didn't do any visiting.
Yeah, the community aspect and all that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, from the congregation anyway.
Of course.
Yeah, yeah.
And how does that compare to today?
Well, I think a lot of people nowadays are more distant. The community-wise is not near as thick as what it used to be. Maybe for certain people. But before it used to be the whole congregation together. But maybe now the congregations are getting so big, there's just no community that we're not with everybody anymore.
And what about the music? How's that changed?
Well, before we never had any piano or organ. And then it took a while, and it was church music was only organ music, not piano. And now they have all kinds of drums and flutes and whatever in church for music.
Yeah, no, it's anything.
Yeah, yeah. And for myself, I still prefer lovely organ music.
Prefer the old hymns.
Yeah, and the old hymn. And that's what I appreciate here. Because on Thursday we have a hymn sing. And that is all the old Christian hymns that we all grew up with.
All the classics.
Well, I don't know, you call them classics, I don't know. But anyway, the old hymn sings. And we all love that.
You built a new house in 9 days? Because the church burned down and then...
Yes. Yeah. But it was only the round logs.
Yeah,
That the town...
Log cabin.
Log cabin, yeah. But, so I mean, round logs are here and here. So I mean, there was a lot of cracks in there.
Oh, okay. So that's what you're saying, when you put moss into the cracks, that's what you were
Yes,
referring to.
and that's what kept the mosquitoes out.
That's good.
And the flies. And it kept the heat in the house.
In the poem that you read, you mentioned something about bear and moose meat.
Oh yes, well that's what I grew up on.
So you went and hunt, like your dad and brothers would go hunt bears?
My dad especially, anyway, yes.
Cool.
Bear is an awful lot like pork,
Really?
but a little drier than pork.
Yeah, imagine it'd be tough.
It all depends how well you cook it. Because
Fair.
nowadays the people that cook meat, I don't really care for it because half it is raw. And I do not like anything red in my meat because that's just like eating the blood. And I do not like that.
Not a fan of the rare meat.
No, absolutely not. That's why I enjoy chicken meat, because that has to be well done.
That's true. And then you said too when you had a preacher come and stay with you and you gave him bear meat and he wasn't a big fan of that?
Well, he was just a visiting minister
Okay.
that would come every once in a while.
Gotcha.
And yeah, and then he would come and he could drive a car. Well, first of all, he came on horseback, and then later on they came with car, and that's when he got stuck. But yeah, then he came, and it was meal time, and he could eat. And he said, "Mom had a good meal." But anyway, then he found out it was bear meat. So he was shocked out of his.
Not the most common thing to eat.
No. That was unheard of.
And then the house that you stayed in too, you had one bed for your parents and for the baby, and then everybody else was
On the
kinda
floor.
home. Wow, that's true.